Hey guys, okay, so this is going to be a quick little video on atmospheric perspective with line weight, which we talked about in class a little bit on Thursday. And basically, all that's really referring to is the idea that you're going to let the weight of your line change as our perspective goes back in distance. So you can see here in this line drawing, this line that's way up here in the front, these trees, the line weight is very thick here. And as it goes even a little bit further back in the distance, just a little bit, I would imagine that if we were in this drawing, these trees back here, these trees that are sort of in the mid distance, they would be maybe 50 feet away from these trees, here that are right in the foreground. But even so, this line weight here is a little bit thinner than the thick line weight here in the very foreground. Then as we go, very far back into distance, probably, maybe half a mile away, this hilltop has got an even thinner line weight and much less detail. And then very, very far back in the distance, now we're approaching our horizon, so we're getting to that 17-mile difference. The tree line has got an even thinner line weight, even less detail, and you can see here where the line is starting to even break apart a little bit. Right here, I know I talked to you guys about that. You can see where as the way the line is used, it indicates distance and depth in the image. And where this really comes from is this concept. So, turn this off. I'm going to show you guys this. This concept of things that are very close to us have a great deal of contrast and detail, and things that are very far away from us become increasingly gray, less saturated, and less detail. Now, this image that you're looking at now, this is a shaded in image, and I don't want you guys to get hung up on that because the projects that we're working on right now is all line art. But the same concept applies. As you can see here with the number 1, this has got a lot of contrast. This is very black here. This is very white. It's even pulling out the little details, little sparkles in the water. And all of that gives us the impression that it's much closer to us. Then as we get all the way back here to this mountain in the distance, you can see this has gone pretty much to a mid-gray right here. And it has none of the contrast and none of the details that you can see here in this, in the number 1 that's the closest to us. Now, this is an example of how that works with line art. This is just a little tiny sketch that I did right here. You guys can see my mountains that are close to us. I've got really thick lines. I'm pulling in detail of the mountains right there, showing rocks on the mountains. Then my mountains that are in mid-distance, those lines get thinner. There's fewer details. And then way back in the back, the mountains and the clouds in the back, again, I'm letting that line kind of break up, and the line itself is very thin. So this should be a very clear example over a long distance, how that works when you've got, thicker line to thinner line to a line even breaking up. But now I know you guys are probably all thinking, well, what about for an interior space? Because you guys are working on your interior spaces right now. Well, it's really the same thing. This is an little interior sketch that I did, and I've got a chair and a desk kind of close to us, and here the chair's got the thickest part, the line that's using to outline the chair is the thickest line. I've pulled out more detail right here, little textures on the chair. Also with the desk, because it's very close to us, again, it's got, the thickest line. I'm also picking up the most detail of what's on the desk. And then as we go back to the middle ground, which is the back wall of the room, you guys should be able to see that this line, is thinner, much thinner than this line, right? And then as you go out the window into the distance, that line is the thinnest of all. And while the desk, remember I said it's got all these details right here, if you notice, I didn't try to sit here and put in, every little brick on the building that's back here, because I'm letting those details go away so that it fades into the distance and becomes more of just a mid-gray, like this gray right here. Now that's how it works as line art. Again, line art versus shading. But I want you to think about the fact that you're going to keep your details and your contrast super close to us, and then let just details disappear as we go back into the distance. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples of how that works in other artwork. So this is one, this is a comic panel, and we can zoom in and see, you know, this artist, of course, again, a little bit of shading here, and I want to stress that for you guys, this project is all line art, not shading, but you can see here where this artist, you know, is letting this line be quite a bit thicker, right? It's quite a bit thicker than the line back here, you know, on these buildings way back in the distance. And even to the point where you can start to see these lines begin to break up here. So we'll zoom back out and you guys should be able to see all of that working together. Without this shading, you know, that we're on the armor here, although you could, you know, say this is, you know, here's some line work right here. Like this is line work right here. You could say that all of this is just showing the variance of line when it's really using line to shade. But all of this is quite a bit thicker and darker than any of the line work that's back here, you know, in the background, anything back here. In fact, if this artist had been in my class, what I would have advised them is let some of these windows back here disappear. We actually don't even need to see them. We get that that's a building, that's a city back there, and seeing all of those windows actually kind of flattens out the space a little bit. So I want you to think about that again when it comes to doing your interior piece. You know, with even if it's not a great distance like this is, you can still let some of those details just kind of disappear and zone out. They don't all have to be drawn in. And then here's one more that I'm going to show you. And this is just showing how even very simple line, you know, so unlike this guy who, you know, there's a lot going on here, right? Like this is a very detailed, very complex drawing. You can get the same atmospheric perspective with your line weight, even in a very simple drawing. You know, we've got, we've got this guy coming in here. He's got this kind of thicker line, right around his head, around his knee. His shadow is sort of indicated right here with a line. And then as we get back here to these guys, their line is, again, a little less, you know, a little less thick. And their details start to kind of fade out. There's a lot more kind of grains of sand and dirt right here under him. And there's less back here. There's a lot more lines of the grass right here, and as we get back in the distance, there's less right here. So even though this is a very short distance, this is probably only, you know, I'm going to say a couple of feet, we're still able to get a sense of depth based on the darkness, thickness of the lines with the details going back to less thick, less detailed line. So I feel like this, you know, should be pretty clear how you guys need to approach your interior drawing and your exterior drawing of your room. I just want you to keep that in mind because that showing that atmospheric perspective, along with all of our linear perspective that we've learned, is part of what it takes to bring, you know, life into your illustrations.